Hello, everybody. Fios One News, Long Island, and Fios One News, New Jersey's Joe Cioffi here.
And Joe Rayo with Fios One News, Lower Hudson Valley on the Monday before the Fabulous 4th.
On the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Hope everybody
right
had,
up there.
It
Yeah.
is. Yes, it's sitting right over your head, so
Yes.
you got to be careful because I could maybe make it bounce.
Ow! All right, stop that.
Okay, so Joe, a couple of things, just because we started out up late tonight, so we're only going to have about 10 minutes or so. As folks are joining on, like Jason Schaefer, Nicole Sciano, Shirley Coates, Stacy Sweet, Rob Riley, William Scott.
Stacy Sweet, I remember.
Yes, Rebecca Dambroff, so do I. John Sears, see you, safe trip home, John. Gina Cottrell Mangini on it goes. Everybody's joining on board. Let me just touch on a couple of things. First off, there was this raging debate about whether this weekend we just finished, or next weekend is the 4th of July is the holiday weekend. The 4th of July holiday weekend. Right. The answer to that question is neither. Okay, there is no 4th of July holiday weekend because the 4th of July falls on. When does it fall?
Wednesday.
Which is?
In the middle of the week.
Which is? What is Wednesday? The 4th of July.
Yes.
Right. So it's a standalone holiday. It's the 4th of July because it falls on the 4th of July. It's not one of those movable holidays that goes to a Monday, or used to be movable holidays when you had Lincoln's and President's Day and Washington's birthday and so on. It's like Veterans Day is always November 11th.
Right.
4th of July is always July 4th. So
right.
Neither weekend is a holiday weekend. I only merely suggested that the creative amongst you may have made it a 9-day weekend by taking Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday and Friday off from this week, assuming that Wednesday was a paid holiday for you. That's it. Neither day's a holiday.
Well, Major League Baseball disagrees with you.
Well, because they can, but nobody's going to ball games these days anyway. So
I mean, today I noticed all the ball clubs, all of the Major League Baseball clubs have red, white, and blue in their hats.
Oh, I mean, that's perfectly reasonable.
And little stars
right.
all over these. But, that's, I understand it. It's very nice and perfectly reasonable. But to them, the 4th of July, it's not a holiday. It's an entire week.
Right, it's a marketing ploy.
Right.
So we got that out of the way. Okay, so, one of the things I noticed yesterday, Joe, which was the hottest day of the stretch, and Sunday, and one of the things that happened yesterday was that around mid-morning these clouds developed in New England. I know we're on double screen here, it won't be for long. These clouds developed and they moved overhead. So what shocked me was we had broken to overcast skies over much of the area here from like yesterday mid-morning to early afternoon. And yet somehow the temperature still managed to get up to 95 or 6. But those clouds may have cut off a couple of degrees. And so in places that got to 97 or 98 would have gotten to 100 or 101. I think those clouds kind of did that.
Well, what was amazing to me was that Montauk Point, of all places, got to 90 yesterday. And that
which is rare.
That doesn't happen very often, but it happened yesterday.
We got some thunderstorms blowing up tonight across central Pennsylvania and upstate New York. They're not coming anywhere close to us. They're going to be gone before too long.
Right. They're right now. They're in parts of northeastern Pennsylvania, and you're absolutely right. Tonight is going to be just fair and unusually mild and unusually muggy. So nothing's going to happen tonight. But tomorrow, I think around mid to late afternoon into at least part of the evening tomorrow night, there's a fairly good chance that not a few places are going to see some shower or maybe some thunder boomer activity.
Just looking at temperatures right now, we talked about the fact last week that the south wind was going to play a role today, and it did. The temperatures this midday were actually running higher than they were at midday yesterday.
Right.
And if it wasn't for the fact that the wind had kicked into the south or even the southeast right around noontime, today would have wound up being the hotter day. But instead, temperatures in some places stopped going up completely, and in fact even eased during the afternoon across parts of Long Island, although it was still well middle to upper 80s. but the warmest inland sections in New Jersey made mostly middle 90s. And I think that tomorrow we'll probably see the warmest places make it up to, say, 90 to 95. And everybody else might be, I don't know, 85 to 92. Does that kind of jive with you?
Well, you know, it'll be dependent upon the convective clouds. When are they going to start bubbling up or percolating, as the late, great Tex Antoine used to say, in the afternoon? And then we'll see just how much precipitation we manage to squeeze out of those clouds during the mid to late afternoon and evening hours, because that could hold the temperatures down some, but it will also mean sky-high dew points and humidities. And certainly, like the old saying goes, it's not the heat, sometimes it's the humidity. And I think this week, Joe, I think the worst of the heat is actually behind us.
I agree. The humidity is going to be god-awful for the rest of the week.
Absolutely.
But the worst of the extreme temperatures was yesterday and in some places today.
I think the National Weather Service agrees with us, because unlike the last couple of days where they've had excessive heat watches and warnings posted, the only thing they have posted for tomorrow is just a plain old-fashioned heat advisory. So it doesn't look like the...
Up your way. They still got the excessive for parts of for most of New Jersey.
Yeah.
But the inland areas, with the humidity there, even if it only gets to 93 or 4, the humidity is going to be so sky high that it's just going to feel like it's over 100 anyway. And here's the difference, Joe. You got this. You look at these isobars that are out in the over the ocean. You've got basically a southeast flow of tropical air,
right,
pretty much for the rest of the week. It does trigger off some pop-ups on Tuesday, and again on Wednesday. Who knows where they actually will line up, whether they line up along the coast or just inland. But the real game changer is Friday. This is Friday afternoon. Looks like a very strong cold front will be coming through.
Right. There's a nice shortwave that is up over eastern Canada and extends or protrudes southwestward into
we can show
parts of
that. I'll bring it up. Hold on.
And
it's kind of right in. I'll get the wider regional. Probably see it better on the whole North America thing.
Right, and that's going to be the one that's going to help deliver a pretty good shot, albeit it's going to be short-lived. It probably lasts for a couple of days, Saturday and Sunday, which is good timing, before the humidities start to climb again early next week. But at least for a couple of days, next weekend, dew points will be back in the 50s. Air temperatures will probably be hovering somewhere in the mid and low 80s, maybe even a few upper 70s. So it will be much, much better. It'll give your air conditioners and fans a rest by the weekend.
You can see the evolution of this. The upper high in the east basically stretches out east-west, and then the western part of that migrates westward toward the southwest. So what that does is it opens up the jet stream in Canada to drop back into the east, which is something that it's been kind of keying on. And I think with if this holds, we could probably see a succession of systems dropping into the east, and I think what that means is that, can it get hot for a day or two? Yeah, but only for a day or two. Not seeing a big ridge along the east coast makes, when you have the big ridge, that's when you got days and days and days of heat.
Right.
This is going to be more like June, where it got hot for very warm or hot for a day or two, and then you got a shot of cool air behind. At least that's what the long range outlook. That's the plan on the table.
Yeah, I think, and this Climate Prediction Center has also been indicating or suggesting. I mentioned this last Friday, that beginning around the 13th or 14th of this month, that the probabilities for above normal temperatures are actually going to give way to near or even slightly below normal temperatures through the latter part of July. We'll see. Interesting to see if that actually happens.
Yeah, this is a pretty active Canadian jet that comes back in, starting late this week with the first shot, and then later next week you get several short waves that rotate around. So this is not a heat wave upper air for the east.
Right. This is just what we're into right now. Again, is temporary. We saw it last week happening, though, like a balloon inflating over the northeast and into eastern Canada, this rather large-scale ridge of high pressure, which is something we haven't seen a lot of in recent summers, but it's happening now, and it will persist for a little while longer, and then things again will be changing, especially by the weekend.
I'm going to bring us front and center because we're coming up on quarter to the hour, so might have a little time to just run through a few questions. Got a nice crowd out tonight. It's cooler to be inside and watch.
They're all inside with the air conditioning.
and why not? Tom Henry, marine forecast for the 4th of July. Long Island or New Jersey, Tom. Either way, I think it's going to be, variable to southeast winds overnight and southeast winds during the day. Probably under 15 knots, the way it looks to me.
Right. We don't really see any significant, even into the weekend. And that obviously will change or may change. But right now, I really don't see anything, tremendous in terms of the winds. The winds will obviously go to northwest by, Friday night, Saturday. But it doesn't look like really a nice, really sharp push of Canadian air. Although, 10, 15 miles per hour, that's certainly a possibility.
From the standpoint of the heat that we're getting, this is going to be another example of the models overdoing the temperatures.
The temperatures,
again. That's something to pay attention to when we, as we go on in the next couple of months if that pattern holds. Because
remember the GFS 105 in
Boston? Well, we knew that was insane. There were a couple of 100-degree readings peppered along the way. But from southeast PA on up into southern New England.
But to contrast that, the NAM was kind of suggesting that we'd get a backdoor and have temperatures in the 80s and maybe even the 70s, and that's not going to happen either.
That's not going to happen either. The compromise view was probably right, but the extreme heat. This is why you have to be careful when you see some of these models throw out big numbers. And I really think yesterday, those clouds that came in mid-morning to early afternoon made a huge difference. Knocked off a couple of degrees on the temperatures. And today, when that south wind kicked in, as we said earlier, around noontime, that kind of stopped everything. So Friday, Philip Demore, is the day where we get the break. And I think, by the way, Joe, Friday, depending on the setup, that could wind up being some strong thunderstorms.
Strong to maybe even severe. We'll see. I did check the folks over at the Storm Prediction Center earlier today just to see if their extended forecast for Thursday or Friday suggested any kind of chance for severe weather. And naturally, of course, they've hedged and backed off and said, well, we don't have enough information yet to be confident enough to do that. But I'm sure they're thinking in the back of their mind that could be a case as well.
Christina Morel, tropics are generally quiet. There's a system in the northern Gulf that's kind of hugging the central Gulf Coast, but it's too close to the coast for it to develop, at least from what I can see.
Meanwhile, the Pacific has storm number 6,
Fabio, which will probably be a Cat 3 before it's done, but it's another one of these out to sea ones, so that's kind of and that's not unusual as we now move into we've got one through June and early July. The Pacific usually fires up early,
right,
and the Atlantic kind of takes its time. Real quick, Joe, let me see if I can't do it now. Remind me tomorrow. We've been talking about the water temperature profiles in the tropical Atlantic, and one of the things that I've cautioned on terms of the forecast is that just because you see the below normal water temperatures now doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be below normal in August, and they've been below normal through the month of June. But in the last week or so, the water temperatures in the tropical Atlantic have trended higher, and they're kind of almost to the neutral line in terms of being close to average. So, that could be a sign that maybe by the time we get to August, the water temperatures in the tropical Atlantic might be no worse than average. On the other hand, that cold pool could bleed down again. We're just going to have to watch and see what happens.
Right, and this particular summer season, I did get a chance over the weekend to look at some of the logbooks that I kept for over 20 years at my former employer and found some interesting stats. For example, the summer of 1999, July of 1999, 17 out of 31 days at or above 90, and they had heat waves of 8 days, 8 consecutive days above 90 that year in the Hudson Valley at White Plains Westchester Airport, or I should say Harrison. They also had another heat wave of 5 days and another of 4 days. That was an incredible summer in terms of heat, and only twice now, going back over the last 20 plus some odd years, has White Plains hit or exceeded 100 degrees. And in fact, in one of those cases, 102 which tied the record, the all-time record set back on July 4th, 1966. So it's, as hot as it's been out there, and a lot of people are already complaining the last few days, this is nothing compared to what we went through back in 1990.
Oh yeah, this is
20 years ago.
It really isn't. Yeah. This is just. I kind of rationalized it this weekend, Joe. A heat advisory means that it's hot.
Right.
I'm advising you about that. An excessive heat warning is basically saying, Joe, it's very hot.
Yeah.
I mean, well, that's really how I look at this stuff. The function of the advisories and the warnings apparently is to, of course, get the information out that the heat is and of course we know it's problematic for a lot of folks. I'm not trying to diminish that at all, but at the end of the day, it's summertime. It gets hot, and sometimes it gets very hot, and this is just how it is. And there's nothing new here, nothing unusual. This is very typical. I had somebody, by the way, on my YouTube channel ask me, of course, saying that this was all being orchestrated by folks, the folks with the dark glasses, with the Doppler radar, and they're just basically manipulating weather across the country.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to admit something right now, Joe. I'm part of that manipulation plan. Yes, I'm coming clean about this.
Okay.
Okay. You know what it really is?
What is it, Joe?
See, I really like Washington State cherries. And if it's hot in the east,
right,
it's cool in the west. So we manipulate that,
okay,
so that we can lengthen the season for cherries, because the longer they stay, the only way cherries get very sweet,
right,
is that you have to pick them late. So you see, I orchestrated this heat wave so that it not because it needs to be hot in the east, but it needs to be cool in the west.
You want
I can have a few extra weeks of cherries.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the real reason. I just want you to know that.
This is the man, folks, and he wants his cool cherries. And I guess, but it's going to turn hot out there again, out in the Washington State, or
well, because we have to manipulate it in there,
balance it out, or whatever.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I got to work, because I also like nectarines, so I have to figure out how to manipulate it for that. All right.
Okay.
So let's leave it at that. FiOS 1 News Long Island and FiOS 1 News New Jersey at the top of the hour.
And FiOS 1 News Lower Hudson Valley. And of course, we will be back here tomorrow. And each day, as we get closer to the weekend, we'll have more and more good news, I'm hoping.
Yes.
That the humidity will come down and the heat will be just a thing of the past for at least a few days. And that certainly looks like it'll be there. And we'll see whether or not we have to deal with severe weather warnings on Friday.
Yeah, Friday I think we could get some strong storms. Rocco Fridella, enjoy your cigar. Hope to see you soon. And thanks everybody for being here. Nice crowd tonight. I know you guys, either some of you want the heat to end or not to end. Eventually it will end, so figure it out. If you like it, enjoy it while it lasts. If you hate it, just be patient. It'll be over with by the time we get to Friday. Take it easy, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.
Au reservoir.